Today I want to talk about seeking connection and control. We look at our lives, and especially as we get older, we realize that we want something. We maybe work through the things that we're told that we should have, depending on our home life. We'll be told different things, like maybe you should be a doctor or a lawyer, or have a steady job and a nice house and a flashy car, and then you'll be complete, especially when you find your partner, your spouse. And then that's supposed to make you complete and fulfilled, and a lot of people do that and it's enough. But then there's a lot of people who do all the things, have a stable, centered life, but it's still something's missing. Something's missing. And so what many people start to do at that point is they seek control. They're like, okay, there's something missing, so let me start manipulating my life to get it to where I want. And if they stop for a minute and think about, well, what is it that I really want? Maybe I just want happiness. And so they do all the things they were told that would bring them happiness. And in this world, that often involves a lot of material goods, or travel, or collecting things, experiences, stuff, people. And maybe they figure out that, oh, well, maybe joy isn't enough. Maybe I want peace. I just want peace. I want, things to be quiet and even. So then we work even harder on the control. We're like, okay, no running in the house. We go to work and we say, okay, I'm going to become the boss. And that way I can tell everybody what to do, and they'll do it to my specifications. And that will bring me peace at work. And then at home, I'll organize everything in a certain way and tell everybody it needs to be this way, and my home will be orderly, and then I'll have peace. And guess what? It doesn't work. We watch people become very, very powerful, and they try to control entire companies, entire industries, countries. Some people are crazy enough to even try and control the entire planet. But control does not bring peace. It doesn't bring happiness. It brings more clinging to control. And sooner or later, even if you become a master of control, the body ages. The body becomes ill. The body decays. And you can spend lots and lots of money on different treatments and cures and the pursuit of immortality. But guess what? You can't control the body. The body has its own flow, its own karma. It's going to do everything that it was set up to do. And we can certainly influence our bodies, our life, our world, but we don't control it. So we have this idea that has been fed to us from the time we were born, that to experience support, security, happiness, peace, we have to have control over the situation. And our mind has latched onto that idea, and it comes out in all these really weird little ways. we try to control our relationships. We try to control our bodies. We try to control the car in front of us on the freeway. They're not driving fast enough, so I'm going to ride right up on them. Or maybe somebody's riding up on us because they think we're not driving fast enough, so we try to control them, slowing down. There's that whole game that happens. And a lot of it's unconscious, that we're not even aware the little ways that we try to exert control over each other and over ourselves. But if we kind of dig through, like, well, what are we hoping the control is actually going to give us? Again, we have the sense we want peace, we want joy. But those come from connection. And we know this. Everyone knows this on some level. That what we're actually seeking is connection. It's happening at a cellular level in our body. Every cell within our being is seeking connection with all of the surrounding cells. It's just happening biologically. It's just, that's how bodies work. That's how this world works. I remember, this was the 70s, before they knew the danger of mercury, but our science teacher would let us play with liquid mercury. And it was fascinating to watch it roll around the silver liquid. And it would always try to connect with the other bits. Like if you separated it out on a plate, and if there was any movement at all, the little bits would just naturally be drawn together, seeking connection. You know, they don't do that anymore because they figured out that, oh wow, mercury poisoning. So we live and learn, right? So this is happening, this seeking connection. It's happening at a cellular level. It's happening at a physical level of all the different objects that have arisen in this phenomenal world. And it's happening within us mentally and emotionally. We want to connect. That's when we feel good, is when we have connection. But this weird thing happens when we feel disconnected. What do? Instead of going and consciously trying to connect, that control mechanism comes out and says, no, I need to control everything. If we feel disconnected with our body, instead of slowing down and connecting with it and figuring out, okay, body, what do you need to be supported, we try to force the body into behaving. If our loved one is doing something weird and we're not connecting with them, what do? We try to force them into the box that we think they belong in. And try different ways to either punish or reward to get them to behave how we think they should. Control. Instead of just stopping for a minute and saying, okay, how can I connect? And I think this happens, this resorting to control so quickly happens because we forget that we already are connected at the most essential, most fundamental level. Buddhism, they call it the Dharma Kaya, the formless light out of which everything arises. This pure and perfect, just effulgent light. And then out of that arises the energetic world, and then out of the energetic world arises the physical world. And that's what we are. It's not that we are a part of it we are it. But in our minds, we make that little distinction. We think that, oh, I'm a part of it, so therefore if I'm a part of it, that means I can be apart from it. A lot of spiritual teachers have used the ocean as a metaphor, but I find it not a great metaphor, because we could walk out to the beach and grab a cup and scoop up some ocean water, and now we have water that's separate from the ocean. But that's not how life is. That's not how existence and non-existence actually are. There is no separation, ever. There's nothing we can do to separate from that which we are. But we can forget. It's really, really tricky. We forget. And then we get caught up in these imaginary stories that are very real, because they have impact on our bodies, on our minds, on our moods, on our mental state. So it's not enough to be like, oh yeah, that suffering I'm feeling, that's just a story. And while that's true on a certain level, it's still real to the person who's stuck in the story. There's a sociologist who said, what is real? If we believe something is real, it's real in its consequences. So if we are stuck in the story, we're stuck in the story. So don't try and just bypass it and pretend, because that, guess what? That's just another type of control. That we can just learn how to pretend and fool ourselves. But in order to remember this essential connection of that which we are, we need to gather our control. And that's the paradox. So we have this opportunity to consciously direct our attention. And that's the only place that we have control, truly, is we have this interesting ability as we are in these finite bodies. We are the infinite stuffed in these finite bodies. And our sole point of control is where we focus our attention. And when we focus our attention on that which is essential, that which we truly are, then we discover that connection with ourselves, with eternity, with all of existence. But if we take that same ability to focus our attention and we use it to try and control the external world, then we just dig ourselves deeper into suffering, into sorrow, into anguish and frustration. And it's tricky because it can feel like it's working for a while. Especially if we have a lot of power, if we have honed our ability to concentrate, we can create very intact worlds within our mind. We can insulate ourselves where we allow in only the impressions that support the story that we're living. There's people who are really good at this, and they build, I guess what you could call cults. where everybody is dreaming the same dream. And we're watching this in this country right now, where people are divided into their own little worlds, and they truly believe that that is all real and it's the only reality. But it's all illusion. And eventually that striving for control will cause it to implode eventually. There'll be dissent in the ranks. Somebody will realize that, oh wait, this is not giving me what I essentially need, that sense of connection. You start to hit that boundary of self and other, and the inside of that group gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and then that sense of connection falls apart. And that's the life cycle of these different cults that arise and fall away. But what we're really seeking, as I said, is that sense of connection. If we can connect with the ultimate, the source, for lack of a better word, then we can bring that into connecting with our own body. And then when we look at other people who have bodies, there's that sense of connection that we start to recognize in one another. Because there's a temptation to enter into meditation, you connect with that pure and perfect light, and then you just kind of stay floating, completely ungrounded. And when you try to interact with the world, there's a sense of disconnection. So that's not quite it. There's something missing. So what we can do is connect, as I said, with that pure and perfect light, and then we bring it into a connection with our own body. We ground it. The groundlessness of existence can be grounded into our body. And then we can check in with our body and say, okay, body, what do you need to be supported? What do you need for joy, for peace? And we listen. And we follow through. And in doing so, we start to catch where those little impulses for control are. We start to recognize them through our practice of mindfulness, where we're paying attention when we're not sitting on the cushion. And then when we interact with other people, we recognize that, oh, you're infinity stuffed into a body too. And that recognition provides a basis for connection. And when we start to connect with one another at that level, the need to try and control one another just doesn't arise. That impulse to try and control another person, another situation, isn't needed. But because we're habitual beings, we like to do the same thing over and over and over again. As we're practicing, if we have not perfected our connection with eternity, then we want to keep paying attention. We want to keep repeating the process where every day, twice a day is better, we meditate, we connect with that stillness, that perfect and pure light. We connect with our body, become centered in our being. And then we interact with the world from this very centered place, and we pay attention that when that impulse to control arises, when we start to feel knocked off balance by a situation. And in that moment, we can recenter ourselves, become reconnected, and it switches our perception, our viewpoint. And instead of asking, how can I control the situation to my advantage, the question becomes, how can I connect deeper with this other person, with this place, with this situation? And the more we practice this reaffirming and remembering our connection with ourselves and each other and the world around us, naturally we feel happier, we feel freer, we feel more peace. So that might be a radical departure from what most people are doing, who are running around trying to control every last little thing. But instead, I want to invite you to just play with this idea of connection. See what that feels like to intentionally try to connect with everyone and everything. And I want to warn you, at times it might feel very overwhelming because there's a lot of people on this planet. There's a lot of different creatures. There's a lot of different objects, all of which has their own energy that creates impressions, that creates music that we feel within our being. But all of it, that cacophony of energies, can all be resolved back into pure and perfect light. So when you do get overwhelmed, it's the same process. Instead of trying to control it and stop it and running away from it, try to connect with the deepest, purest essence of all of it. And that's when we enter into the center of the tornado of existence. That's where it's quiet enough for us to ask, what do I need to do to be connected, to recognize and enhance this sense of connection at a deeper level. And when we follow through with that action, it ripples out and makes it easier for others to also connect. So it has great impact on the world. The more that we connect with ourselves, with eternity, and with the world. So, step by step. Just drop by drop, our jar fills. As you start to live this way, you recognize more and more that there really is no separation. Like, even if somebody were to go up to the ocean, grab a cup of water out of it, it's that water is not separate from the water in the ocean. It only looks that way. It only appears that way because of our perception as relative beings. We step out of the awareness of infinity and become aware of the finite. So play with that, see what happens.